And we are live. Welcome to Olivia's Stories, ladies and gentlemen. Story number 1.
I find myself in a deeply distressing and confusing situation that I need to share. Recently, I discovered that my wife was cheating on me with a man, leaving my 5-year-old alone at school to fulfill her lust. I am overwhelmed with emotions and searching for some form of solace. Let me share the details of my shocking discovery and how I handled things going forward. I am writing this to lessen my burden of pain that I feel like I have been carrying for such a long time. Some context before we get into the details of how I discovered that my wife had been cheating on me and what I did after that. My name is Chris, and I am 43 years old. I have been married to Susan for 10 years. Susan is 36 but looks very young and attractive for her age. This was something that I was proud of, and never once did it cross my mind that it would someday bite me in the back. We have a beautiful daughter, Kylie, who just turned 5. Our marriage had always seemed strong, and I never had any reason to doubt Susan's loyalty. However, a few months ago, I discovered something that made a big dent in our relationship. It turned our lives upside down. After Kylie was born, my wife decided to dedicate her entire time in bringing her up. She was selfless to give up her career and prioritize bringing up our daughter. I had been very grateful to her for this decision because Kylie had always been a fussy kid and demanded a lot of attention. My wife's dedication and care for Kylie allowed me to focus on my career and provide for our family. I admired her patience and commitment as she tirelessly nurtured Kylie's growth and development. Despite the challenges, my wife never wavered in her commitment to providing the best for our daughter. We made sure that we take the best possible care of Kylie by enrolling her in quality educational programs and extracurricular activities. Additionally, my wife constantly sought out resources and support to ensure Kylie's well-being and happiness. Together, we created a loving and nurturing environment for our daughter to thrive in. Susan would always be there for Kylie, so I had little or less to do in upbringing Kylie, to be very honest. I trusted Susan blindly and just let her handle everything at home. One day I got a call from Kylie's school that they were unable to reach Susan and wanted me to come and pick her up. They had a fire emergency and had to leave all the kids early. I called Susan, but it went straight to voicemail. I called the landline, but there was no answer. This had never happened, as Susan had always been proactive with anything that concerned Kylie. I knew something was seriously wrong with Susan for her to be missing in action. I decided to go and pick Kylie by myself and then check on Susan. I asked my boss if I could leave as it was an emergency and hurried to Kylie's school. On the way, I saw Susan's car parked at the children's playground near Kylie's school. I was about to drive to her to see if she was okay when I saw someone get out of the car and kiss her a passionate goodbye and walk towards another car parked a few blocks away. I was shocked, to say the least. I was fuming with anger at Susan for not only cheating, but also not prioritizing our daughter for her thirst for sex. I decided to first pick up Kylie and then see what Susan was up to. I reached Kylie's school and saw her waiting all by herself, alone and scared. I hugged her and told her that I got her and would never leave her alone. As we walked back to the car, Kylie looked up at me with tear-filled eyes and asked why her mom wasn't there. I struggled to find the right words, trying to shield her from the painful truth. It was in that moment that I vowed to protect and support Kylie through this difficult time, no matter what. I had then decided that Susan would have to pay for not just cheating on me, but also for neglecting Kylie. Susan called me and said that she had a flat tire and would be late to pick up Kylie. I told her that I already picked her up and not to worry. I could not show what I was actually feeling in front of Kylie, so I acted normal. I was unable to get the image of a man kissing Susan out of my head. I asked her to come home as there was something that I needed to talk to her about. As I was waiting, I pictured the scenario in my head, and it did not look good for me. I had no proof or evidence that my wife was cheating. It was just my word against hers. She could just deny that it was not her, and then get cautious about not getting caught in the future. If I would challenge her in court, I might lose my daughter and also my house to my wife. I knew that I had to tread very carefully to make sure that Susan would be the one regretting all of this. Being reactive and aggressive would be of no help to me. I had to make a concise plan on getting my revenge, and also making sure that my baby girl stays with me no matter what. There was no way I was going to let Susan get custody of our child. I told Susan that I was just too scared and asked her to make sure Kylie was okay and left for work. On my way, I called a lawyer and discussed my options. He told me to gather as much evidence as possible, which would help me in court to prove my wife's infidelity and, in turn, lessen her chances of getting Kylie's custody. He told me to act like I always did, making sure that Susan does not get a hint of anything that I was doing. After getting the clarity of my position right now, I was more motivated and determined to make Susan pay. It was a really long night for me as I kept tossing and turning, thinking about how I could make Susan admit to having an affair. I got up very early in the morning the next day and started to come up with a plan in my head about how to act going forward. I got ready and kissed goodbye to both Susan and Keely as I left work. I had to make sure that Susan had no clue that I was aware of her affair before I dropped the ball on her. I called in sick at work and decided to do a little shopping for everything that I would need. The first thing I bought was a GPS tracker to install in Susan's car. I also bought a few mini cameras that I could install in our house to know Susan's timing of leaving the house. This way I would know when she was meeting and whom. I got all the stuff I needed and went home waiting for Susan to leave the house. As soon as she left, I quickly got to work and installed one camera in the living room and one in the driveway. I was left with another one which I hesitantly installed in the bedroom as I did not know where else to install it. Satisfied with my work, I started to leave the house when I noticed Susan's tablet on the kitchen counter. I thought of a few passwords and finally got in. The tablet was logged into all her phone apps so I could read all the messages that she had been exchanging with her lover on Facebook. I took screenshots of all the messages and decided to leave as it was time for Susan to be back with Kylie. I had connected all the cameras to my phone to keep an eye on Susan. I went home and acted as if everything was normal and we were all a happy family. We had dinner and went to bed. I tried to act all cozy with Susan. She kissed me and said she loved me, which made me puke in my mouth. I controlled myself from not revealing her secret. We made love, though I didn't want to, as everything about Susan repulsed me. I knew that she would get tired after sex and have a sound sleep, which was the plan. After she slept, I connected her Facebook to my phone so that I was aware of her meetings and plans. I made sure I put everything in place without her doubting me sneaking around. I made sure to change my phone's password so that Susan does not get to know about my revenge. The next day, I started looking at how Susan got to know this guy, and since then this affair had been going on. I went to the first message and saw that this guy was a complete stranger who messaged Susan and complimented that she had the perfect figure of a MILF. Of course, he knew that she was married and had a kid. His message was not as surprising as Susan's reply. She sent him a devil emoji and replied how he would know unless he had actually done it. He replied that he could let her know if he could do it once they met. I did not want to read further as I was not ready for Susan's reply. I locked my phone and put it away before I got engulfed with anger and did something I would regret. I could not believe that it was so easy for Susan to flirt with a complete stranger, and the first response she had was that she wanted to sleep with the guy. Not even once letting the thought of Kylie and I cross her mind as she shamelessly flirted with a stranger. The cameras were working fine and everything else was going as per plan. I looked at Susan's Facebook that I had installed in my phone and could see that they were making a plan to meet. I was ready to call in sick at work and follow them to take some pictures as proof. But as Susan mentioned to meet at their favorite place, I had no clue where that could be, so I had no choice but to track Susan's GPS. I decided to wait for Susan to reach the location and then follow her there. There were just 2 hours left before it was time to pick Kylie up from her school, so I knew that they would not be going too far away from home or Kylie's school. I started wrapping up my work and kept checking the GPS tracker from time to time for any movement on Susan's car. It had already been 15 minutes and there was no movement, so I decided to check the cameras and see what Susan was up to. It was a good thing that I had installed a camera in our bedroom so that I would know if she was getting ready before leaving the house. She wore a low-cut blouse, which she said made her uncomfortable, but now she looked quite happy and comfortable wearing it. Now that I knew she was getting ready, I quickly decided to wrap up my work so that I could catch her red-handed and collect some evidence. I put my phone aside and started focusing on my work so that I could leave early. It was almost 10 minutes and there was still no movement on Susan's car. I switched to the cameras to see that probably she might be in the driveway leaving, but to my surprise, she was in our bedroom placing some objects that I had never seen before. It finally struck me that their favorite place was our house. Correction, my house that I had been paying for since we moved in. This was a new low from Susan that I was completely not expecting. I took a break from work and decided to sit in my car and keep an eye on Susan and her lover. I sat in my car and pulled up all the cameras and waited for something to happen. After 5 minutes, a car pulled up in our driveway. A man, probably in his late 20s, rang the doorbell. He was greeted by Susan wearing the same low-cut blouse paired with a skirt that could easily belong to Kylie. I didn't know what they were talking about, which was so funny. She went to the kitchen counter to pick up something, but he followed her around and started kissing her. She pushed him away and gave him something to eat. They then made their way to our room. She blindfolded him before entering the bedroom. She made him sit on the bed and undressed herself in front of him. She then removed his blindfold and started showing off her body. I could tell with his expression that he was pleased with what he saw. They started undressing and making out and then had full-blown sex. I was hurt, angry, and sad at the same time, but I forced myself to watch everything so that I can use all of this to my advantage later. After all this, I was pretty damn sure that there was no way in hell that I would be able to forgive Susan for what she did. I started maintaining a notebook in which I made a note of all their encounters from the beginning in detail, mentioning the date, place, and time where they had been meeting. It was quite shocking to see that all this had been going on behind my back for almost 10 months. I must admit, Susan was not only a very good liar, but also a very good actress. Not even once did I doubt her loyalty towards me. Even I got to know about her affair by accident. If I hadn't been called to Kylie's school that day, who knew how long this would have gone on without me having any clue about it. I was grateful to Kylie for saving my life and my future. She was definitely the best thing that had ever happened to me in my life. As I read through their messages, I could see the amount of respect Susan had towards me, or should I just say the lack of it. The way she made fun of me for not having a clue about them banging each other every time they had a chance was not just disrespectful but also demeaning. She had reduced me to a joke in front of a person I never met and created this image of me that I was incapable of controlling my own wife. This made me so angry, and I wanted to show her what a controlling husband looked like. I now had a new motivation, which was getting my revenge before going to court. I would first show her what kind of a husband I could be, and then drag her ass to court. I spoke to my lawyer and discussed the distribution of assets and property. My lawyer told me that anything that I have completely paid for should be under my name. Our house was under Susan's name, which I changed to Kylie. All the assets would be frozen right now and would go to Kylie once she turns 18. This was the only way I could make sure that Susan gets nothing from me. For the next few days, I kept an eye on Susan's activities and made notes to help my lawyer make a strong case against Susan for adultery. I was finally ready to reveal everything to Susan and confront her about it. I sent Kylie to stay with her grandmother for a few days, as I did not want the conflicts between me and Susan to affect her in any way. I took 2 days off from work to take my revenge on Susan personally. I told Susan that I am sending off Kylie because I wanted to spend some quality time with her at home. She said that she was very happy that we would be getting to spend time together, and she was really looking forward to it and that she loved me. How easy was it for her to act as if she is still in love with me and had done nothing wrong? I was amazed by how flawless she made it look. I sent her grocery shopping so that I could prepare everything for our date night at home. She was very chirpy about it and left without any hesitation. I placed everything in place that I needed. I decorated the entire house with candles, flowers, and chocolates. It had to look like a date, or at least that is what I wanted Susan to think. I then waited for Susan to come back home. I kept tracking her car and then checked if she was massaging her lover. Of course she was. She was telling that her husband is so dumb that he has no clue about the affair and is making time for a special date together. Their conversation was making me fume with anger. I had second thoughts about not making it too bold, but after reading these messages, I felt that she deserved to get her karma. It was time for the curtain to rise and the play to start. Susan came in and looked all surprised at the arrangements that I had made. She hugged and kissed me and told me that it was all wonderful, and she loved what I did for her. I blindfolded her and took her upstairs the same way. She took her lover. I had found the place where she hid her special stuff and arranged it beautifully on the bed. I made her sit on the bed and handcuffed her to the bedpost. I removed her blindfold and she was shocked to see all that stuff of hers out in the open. I whispered in her ear that I found that it was fun to do all of this with her lover. She was speechless that I knew about everything. She was handcuffed and could not even escape. I started reading her the messages exchanged between Susan and her lover. She started panicking and telling that her Facebook had been hacked. She has no idea where and how this was possible. She kept claiming that it was not her. I looked at my notebook, which had notes of their meetings, and started asking her where she was on a particular day. She said that it was too long ago and did not remember. I asked her what she was doing a few days ago at home. She claimed that she was alone and then picked up Kylie from school. I kept her handcuffed and told her that she would be let go only when she starts speaking the truth. I must say that Susan was really stubborn and adamant that she did nothing wrong. I had no choice but to keep her handcuffed. The next day, I took her phone and texted her lover to come home as her husband, had to go away to pick up Kylie and would not be back by tomorrow. It was a great opportunity to spend more than a few hours with each other. I also made sure to add in a few heart emojis to make it look believable. He took the bait and said that he will be there soon. I messaged her lover that Susan had left the door open for him to come inside. I asked him to come to the basement where there was a special surprise waiting for him. I hid myself behind the basement door so that he wouldn't run away before I got what I wanted. Once he came inside and walked into the basement, I locked the door so that there was no way he would escape. He looked confused as he could see Susan all dressed up and waiting for him on the bed in handcuffs. I duct taped Susan's mouth so that she would not interrupt when I talked to her lover. I told him that Susan talked about it and I was fine with their affair. I told him that I would want to see the things they do so that it gives me an idea of what Susan enjoys, as it would help me up my sex game with Susan. I could tell from his face that he was not buying what I was telling him. He kept looking at Susan for probably a sign or reassurance that I was speaking the truth, and when there was no such sign from Susan, he said that he was not comfortable and wanted to leave. I told him that he had no choice but to agree to my wishes before things started getting messier for him. I told him if he does not comply with what I want them to do, then I would have no choice but to send screenshots of their conversations to his family. I also told him that there was no pressure. He could take his time and choose wisely what he wanted to do. I went and sat on a chair from across the bed and told him to follow my directions. I asked him to behave as if I was invisible and go on just like normal whenever they met. I placed my phone on a tripod stand and started recording. He tried to protest against recording him, but I was one with the upper hand, and I would be the one deciding what happens and what doesn't. I told him as long as he behaves as a good boy, this recording would be just between the three of us. All he had to do was have a good time with Susan right now in a way which satisfies me so that I never have to share this footage with someone. He removed Susan's duct tape and started kissing her. She was crying and kept saying sorry and that she would not repeat this mistake again. I told her to act natural and happy as she was getting to spend time with her lover, and if she doesn't do a good job, she would be tied to the bedpost for a really long time. For the next 20 minutes, they were being intimate and making sure that they made me happy with what I was seeing. After they were done, I asked her lover to get dressed and never show his face again. If he does try to cause any harm to me or do anything stupid, then this video would be circulated to anyone and everyone who knows him. He looked petrified at the thought of it, and quickly dressed himself and ran away. I looked at Susan and asked if she liked her husband to be a macho man, like she always wanted since she always kept complaining that I was such a sissy. She kept begging me to please stop and that she would do anything to make up for everything that she has ever done to hurt me. It had been 2 days since I had locked up Susan in the basement. I organized all the paperwork along with the evidence. I understand that it was time to break the news of divorce to her. I went to the basement the next morning, uncuffed her, and asked her to come upstairs. I had the divorce papers on the dining table already signed. I made her sit on the table and asked her to sign the papers. I told her that I had mentioned this divorce was due to her infidelity, and I would be getting Kylie's custody, and the last line says that she mutually agrees to all the terms listed in this document. I knew that if she read the document in detail, she would not agree for a mutual divorce, and that is exactly what I wanted. There was one line which mentioned that she was never to meet Kylie ever in her life, and that I know was something she would not accept. She started yelling at me that I'm acting very inhuman to separate a daughter from her mother. This was something very unacceptable, and she could not sign the papers. She said that she had been taking care of Kylie ever since she was born, and she has every right to demand for Kylie's custody. I told her that she could leave the house if she was not happy with the mutual consent of divorce and custody, and that I would see her in court. She started laughing and told me that this house was under her name, and then I was the one who should be leaving. I knew this was coming, so I threw a bunch of papers on the table which had the details of the new owner of this house listed as Kylie, and the caretaker, until she turned 18, was me. She had no idea what hit her. She did not know that I had known about the affair for far too long to have prepared all this. She kept assuming that I recently got to know about the affair and was acting rashly without any well-thought action plan. She had no idea how liberating it was to finally expose everything I knew about her shameless actions. I asked her to pack her bags and leave before I called the cops on her. She made a disappointing face and told me that she would see me in court and make sure that she would win Kylie's custody and make me regret all that I had been doing to her in the last few days. I told her that I would take my chances with the custody as I was not hopeful about getting it, but I would still fight. Update: it has been a month since Susan left home. Kylie and I have been living alone in our house. Susan tried reaching out to Kylie a few times, but I was always around Kylie and made sure that she never got a chance to meet Kylie alone. It was hard to explain to Kylie what was happening, so I told her that Susan had something important to do, and that was the reason why she could not stay with us anymore. I had also warned her that if she ever tries to play tricks and meet Kylie behind my back, I would have no choice but to tell Kylie about her mother's truth. The divorce proceedings had started, and Susan's lawyer presented the case that I was an abusive husband, and that was the reason why she wanted a divorce. She was so scared of me that she could not demand it on her own, and had to do something that would infuriate me to do it myself. She said that she never actually cheated on me, but only acted to cheat and had to get caught because she wanted her husband to file for divorce. It was a really wonderful story that they had come up with. If I didn't have the evidence that I had in my possession, I was very sure to lose this case along with my house and my daughter. I presented the CCTV footage from the day her lover had come to meet her at home, and everything they did after that. Both Susan and her lawyer were stumped that I possessed the actual proof of them cheating in action. I also submitted my notebook, which had the details of all the dates, times, and places when they had met, and they could confirm it with their locations at that time, and conclude if it was just an act or if they were really cheating. Susan had lost the divorce case and would be receiving nothing in alimony. The next case we had was for Kylie's custody. Susan was very confident to win, so she demanded custody along with a hefty amount of child support. As the case progressed, Susan was gaining confidence that she would be the one winning it. The last evidence that I presented was the day when she was unavailable to pick up Kylie earlier than usual because she was with her lover. I had testimonies from Kylie's school confirming the same. This proved that she was an irresponsible mother and would be putting herself first before her daughter and could not be trusted. This was enough to overturn the case in my favor. Susan looked visibly unhappy with the outcome of this case. This could only mean that she would be getting nothing from me in alimony and also in child support and would have to survive on her own. I gave her a wicked smile and left. After a lot of back and forth with Susan at court, it was finally over. My emotions were all over the place. I did not know if I would ever be able to trust anyone and lead a normal life. I pretended to be happy for Kylie, but deep inside my heart was bleeding. All this drama with Susan had taken a toll on me both mentally and physically. I had lost a lot of weight and was sleep deprived. I just hope that all of this does not affect Kylie and she grows up to be a fine lady without any mental or emotional issues. As I thought that it was all over and I could breathe in peace, Susan kept sending me text messages and calling me, begging me to let her meet Kylie. She told me that there was no need to drag Kylie into all this mess, which could lead to Kylie thinking that her parents don't love her. I wasn't sure what to do about this. Should I let Susan meet Kylie? Would it be the best for Kylie, or should I just ignore Susan's request and bring Kylie away from Susan all by myself? This was something that kept eating me from inside as I was unable to make up my mind. I decided to let Susan meet Kylie as I knew that Kylie had never stayed away from Susan for this long. I hoped that seeing Susan would bring some comfort to Kylie and reassure her that her parents still cared about her. However, I also worried about the potential emotional impact it could have on Kylie if Susan's presence only caused more confusion or distress. Ultimately, I knew I had to trust my instincts and make the decision that felt right for Kylie's well-being. So I texted Susan that she could meet Kylie only because she missed her mom. I took her to a park and waited for Susan to show up. I let them talk and gave them some privacy. Kylie came up to me after 5 minutes and told me if she could go shopping with her mom. I did not have the heart to tell no to her. I spoke to Susan and told her that she gets 2 hours with Kylie, and after that I want Kylie home. She told me not to worry and left with Kylie. There was something pulling at my heart as I saw them leave. Kylie waved me by with a big smile on her face, a smile I had seen after a long time. This caused me to ease a little and I left for home. It was more than 3 hours and there was no sign of either Kylie or Susan. I called Susan, but her phone was switched off. I was getting anxious as it was more than 3 hours and Kylie was not yet home. I was worried about what Susan must have done to Kylie, so I called the cops and told them about it. After 2 hours, I got a call from the cops that they had arrested Susan, who was trying to leave the city along with Kylie. This made me lose my mind. They asked me to come and pick Kylie up. Legally, I was Kylie's guardian, and there was no way Susan could just take her and leave. I went to the station and filed a restraining order against Susan. There was no way she would be pulling such tricks again. I was relieved to know that the cops had caught Susan and prevented her from taking Kylie away. However, seeing Susan's desperate attempt to flee with Kylie made me realize the seriousness of the situation. I vowed to do everything in my power to protect Kylie and ensure that Susan would never harm her again. I knew that there was not much I could do with Susan around and could not always make sure of Kylie's safety. I decided to block Susan from all kinds of communication. I put up the house for sale and decided to move to a different city. This could be the only way that Susan would not be able to come for Kylie. I quit my job and would always be at home with Kylie. Additionally, I made sure to inform my close friends and family about the situation so they could provide support and help keep an eye out for any signs of Susan trying to contact us. I made arrangements for moving to a new city with hope that we would be able to leave all the drama with Susan past us. Susan somehow managed to get an idea about us moving and came home screaming that I was a fraud who was trying to separate a mother from her daughter. I decided that I had had enough of Susan's drama and called the cops on her, as she was violating the restraining order and trying to meet with Kylie. I made sure that Kylie does not see all this, as this would break her heart to see why mother was being treated this way. I knew that Kylie would understand all this once she grew up and would be able to understand why I had to take such drastic measures. This had been a tough ride for me ever since I got to know about Susan's affair. I had been mentally, physically, and emotionally exhausted. I can now live peacefully after moving to a new place with Kylie. Kylie is loving her new school and making new friends, which has helped both of us in our healing process. Being in a supportive and nurturing environment has allowed me to regain my strength and focus on rebuilding my life after such a challenging period. Hopefully, Kylie and I would be able to get past this traumatic experience and move forward with a renewed sense of hope and happiness. It's been a journey of self-discovery and growth, and I am grateful for the opportunity to create a new beginning for both myself and Kylie. With time, I believe we will be able to heal from the pain and betrayal and build a brighter future filled with love. Here's to hoping everything will be positive going forward and Kylie and I being the perfect family together.